Ready?
Justin, middle of the field, 45, 50. Green grass in front of him, leaving Lions in his wake.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes! Husker!
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
61 yards! A Sunday stroll for Justin Fields.
Oh, wow!
And
Now, Bears Etc. with the voices of the Chicago Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
The Bears may have only 3 wins, but they are unbeaten on Thursday Night Football as they knock out the visiting Carolina Panthers 16-13. A suffocating defensive effort and a very clean offensive effort as well. No turnovers, no sacks, and they get the victory. Hi, everybody. With Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak, and welcome into episode 32 of the Bears Etc. podcast. Good to be with you each Tuesday, Thursday, but this week on a Friday after the Thursday night matchup as we look ahead as well later in the pod at the Detroit Lions. Coming up on Tuesday, we'll interview Bears head coach Matt Eberflus, who was at the podium on Friday breaking down the Bears' victory. Steinhoffel's is an employee-owned furniture and mattress store. Visit any of their 4 Chicagoland locations in Vernon Hills, Crystal Lake, Downers Grove, and Harwood Heights, or shop online at steinhoffels.com. It wasn't always perfect, Big Tom, but Tyson Bean and the guys on the offense worked well with the defense, and special teams came through as well, despite giving up a punt return touchdown to get the win. What are your overall views?
You know, I was sitting there studying the stats of this game, Jeff, and if you didn't watch the game and you just looked at the stats from outside, you would think the Bears won by quite a bit. And, they had 133 yards rushing to, I think less than 50 yards rushing by Carolina. They just had the time of possession. They won by 8 minutes. Like you mentioned, no sacks, a pretty clean game on offense. But, it went down to the wire, and the Bears fought hard. I think that the defense is playing better. I think the defensive backs, the linebackers, and the defensive line are all complementing each other well, and hopefully that continues to improve. And I think the biggest question mark going forward after this game is the quarterback position, because you have the dynamic athlete in Justin Fields, and you have a newly arrived Tyson Bean, and you're going to have to, it's going to be interesting to see how Justin heals up throughout a really important practice week.
If the thumb is good to go and he's cleared medically, I would think he's going to be the guy to start against the Detroit Lions. You don't lose your spot due to injury, and that was an injury that's taken some 4 weeks now, but it's a critical one given the thumb, taking snaps, taking hits, the whole bit.
Yeah, and after the 4 games that Tyson Bean started and he won 2 out of those 4, I think there's evidence that he needs more practice time against the experience of some defenses that have an opportunity to work a game plan against him for the whole week. And I like where Tyson Bean's arrow is going. But when you talk about Justin Fields and what he means to the overall performance of the offense, and considering what we saw on the Thursday night against the Washington Commanders, he has an exciting relationship developing with DJ Moore. I think Darnell Mooney has kind of burst onto the scene a little bit more since Justin has been injured. And we all know what Cole Kmet is capable of, and they always have a reliable running game. So all those, that you take into account, it's going to be interesting. But there's going to be other positions that there's going to be interesting decisions that are going to need to be made that are really going to factor in the overall team performance of this group.
I think you're referring to Khalil Herbert as one. He is about ready to come back. He has that 21-day window to come back from his injury. And, Deontay Foreman has been a real impressive player. And I think players enjoy. I read a quote from Darnell Wright talking about the way he runs the football, as physical as he does. The quote, if he's going to do it, I'll be damned if I don't go and do it that way. And that's what you want to hear from an offensive lineman with a running back that is a battering ram, or as I referred to it as bully ball a few times last night. And I love the way he runs, but I also love the way Khalil Herbert runs, and he is a game break threat in that backfield. Roschon Johnson still finding his way back, and they will have big decisions at the running back position. You can't play everyone, and you still have the fullback is going to be back at some point blasting game. You've got Travis Homer. You'd like to keep him on special teams, and Darrington Evans has done a nice job filling in. So it'll be decision time for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus for sure.
But, Jeff, to me, is one of the biggest decisions is going to be made that will affect this team as much as the running back position is the offensive guard position.
True.
Because, you have a free agent that you signed to a big money contract, hopefully going to come back and get back in the competitive mix. You have Tevin Jenkins, who's playing as well as any offensive guard in the division. And luckily enough, he has some experience at the left side as well as the right. You have a seasoned veteran like Cody Whitehair that can probably fill in on any position on the offensive line. But that is going to be a huge decision going forward. And I'm really interested to see what they're going to do about that. And now that all the defensive backs are back in the mix, it's going to be interesting to see if Tremaine Edmonds is ready to come back on defense. So I think in this 10-day window of opportunity, and I did ask Matt Eberflus last night when you and I interviewed him after the game, when is the process of this decision going to be being made? They're going to have a personnel meeting before the weekend begins. And then we probably won't know anything until next Wednesday when that's the real reporting of any practices going forward.
Let's look at snap counts as we bring this Bears Etc. podcast to you. Take a chance, download the BetRivers app today. So, as usual, TJ Edwards plays, he played every snap. Tyreek Stevenson, Jaquan Brisker, a full return, Jalen Johnson. Kyler Gordon with 60 snaps defensively, so he was on the field for the entire game. And Eddie Jackson with 60 as well. And Kyler Gordon is really playing like he was starting to play during training camp before his injury. He was all over the place. And they certainly, as I used that word to describe Brisker a couple of weeks ago before his concussion, deployed Kyler Gordon as well. He hits hard. He's super athletic. He had 8 tackles. He had some pass breakups too. So a lot of great things happening from that nickel spot, which means in this defense, with Matt Eberflus running it, is a good combo. He loves those nickels.
Well, the thing that gives them, when you have an athlete like Brisker and you have one like Kyle Gordon, you have the experience of Eddie Jackson, it gives you a certain rotation of the defensive backs that can keep a quarterback thinking throughout the cadence. And maybe you can get into a chance where, Tyreek Stevenson should have had an interception last night. I think there was another one. Who else? Sanborn, could have had an interception. So now if you can take one of those two plays and get an interception out of it, you're talking about an extra possession for the offense. And, then there's a little bit of reluctancy by the opponent's quarterback to throw into those tight windows. So I like the versatility that it gives the back end of the defense. What I like more is they have a rotation of 8 defensive linemen who, when they have that rotation on the back end of the defense, they can have a fresh group of defensive linemen up in front of them, rushing the passer or trying to stop the run.
Ngakoue had the most at 48, Sweat with 44, and at 8 pressures, according to Next Gen Stats. That's huge. He is one of the top 5 in the league in that category right now. Justin Jones, who I thought a terrific game, had a career high in pressures. He was at 41. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We talked about Javon Dexter getting more snaps than Zach Pickens. Pickens didn't get many more than a week ago. He had 12, but Dexter played nearly half the snaps. He got 29. And I think I felt his presence as well. He had 3 pressures. And that's all, Sweat being the multiplier there. You got to pay attention to him, and it helped everybody on the defensive line. Clearly, it did.
Yeah, Rasheem Green has a sack. DeMarcus Walker's, he has the ability to play up and down the line of scrimmage. Javon Dexter is starting to use his length as a real asset. And you see that from other defensive linemen around the league, how they use their length to, increase the competitiveness against the offensive linemen they're facing. So if Javon Dexter is able to continue the improvement process, I think he'll probably end up getting more snaps and up and down the line of scrimmage.
Braxton Jones got a good rating from PFF for his performance, too, against the pass rush. And, again, no sacks by the offensive line. And, yes, they got 133 yards, but it needed 37 carries. And you know what? I don't care. I don't care what the yard per carry average is. The 37 carries was big. And I that's what we called for. We called for that this week, and I hope it continues. If it's Justin moving forward or Tyson has to play another game, who knows? But I just want to see them continue to utilize those guys up front. It's what they do best. They get off the ball. They get in space. They can pull. They can do a great job getting out on screens when the timing's right. Just put it on the offensive line and put it on those backs to kind of set up the play-action passing game and be better on first down and have shorter third downs. I'm okay. I don't know how you look at it.
I agree, Jeff. Look, I love the whole stable of running backs the Bears have, and that it's including Kari Blasingame. If you even have to put a couple of those guys on multiple special teams in order to keep them active on game day, I would be willing to do that, because Chuba Hubbard last night with Chuba Hubbard in the Carolina Panthers game, he's now elevated to one of their starting running backs. He's also on special teams. So don't take away or don't make a guy unactive on game day because you need a special teamer. I would be willing to put a running back in on special teams in order to keep him active, so you have that fresh group of running backs that you can continue that running game process.
Oh, it's just great to see the offensive line play all 72 snaps as a unit. There were no changes. I don't know how many times that's happened this season, honestly. They played all 72 snaps. I can't recall. I'd have to go and look it up, but that was good. Of course, DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, they're going to be on the field for almost every snap, 67 and 66. Mooney got 48, the running game. Foreman got 38. Roschon got 30. Tyler Scott, EQ St. Brown, each got 28 snaps. Kenyon got 23. Mercedes Lewis in the run game with 20. So it's a good spread. I like the way everybody got on the field for this game.
How about that? How about that fourth down catch by Tyler Scott, though?
Yep.
You want to talk about how do you earn extra snaps? Can we put you on the field in some of the most important down and distances and still consider you a reliable option? That fourth down catch he made and then took a big wallop after it, impressive. And yep. he had a nice wide receiver end around that was also impressive. So I guess the more you get involved in the offense, the more it challenges the defense to be aware of you.
Yeah, 2 double-digit plays right there. And I talked to him after the game. He's not going to get a ton of touches. He knows that. He had a big smile on his face. He was dressed in this all-black Bears coat and shirt that the NFLPA sent him. And I think he was just genuinely excited about getting a win, but also making 2 plays that moved the chains. They got first downs out of it. And there was another catch he made a couple weeks ago, same thing. Gets up in the air, I think bracing himself for a hit. As he moves forward in his NFL career, maybe he doesn't go up in the air to get it. He just makes the catch, and then you can make a play with it with your feet on the ground. Oftentimes receivers do leave their feet, and they don't necessarily have to. I'm not saying he didn't have to in that one, but I'd like to see it because he's got the juice. He's got speed.
Well, you know what? I was also encouraged by his kickoff return, because I don't really think you know a lot about a guy until you see him get a live action in-game kickoff return. Is he going to attack it with speed? Is he going to try to make some moves on initial contact? And is he going to end the play safely with the ball into his hands? All those indicators initially are answered for me. It's difficult now because there's a lot of kicks that are not returned. However, it's
the weather's
nice
going
to
to
have
change
his
too.
speed. Huh?
The weather's going to change too. You're going to see more kicks.
But it's nice to have his speed and willingness back there to be involved in the kicking game.
We're brought to you by PNC, official bank of the Bears. Let's talk about the defense, because 2.7 a carry, a long run of 9. It's been outstanding all season long, the run defense. Third down getting better. It's been a sore subject, obviously, but they did a nice job on third down. And I got to talk about their quarterback, because we touched on it in the pregame, I believe, just about the size of a quarterback gets a lot of attention. He's a sub-6-foot quarterback. And I saw this online today, and I think it's from one of the guys, maybe it was Tony Gonzalez on the broadcast on Amazon. But, the idea is you get a good quarterback in there, and then if there's not enough around him, and they gave away DJ Moore to get him, basically. They traded away Christian McCaffrey to clear the path to get a higher draft pick last year and to try to reload. And teams go through all these machinations to find the guy, and then there's not enough around him to actually have immediate success. So that's the thinking. And the quote here is, then people begin to rush to judgment on the quarterback. And the quarterback then starts to think maybe he's not good enough, and he starts to lose confidence. He didn't look comfortable, and that's a credit to the Bears making him feel uncomfortable in the pocket. When that pocket started to really act like a vice grip on him, it's not easy seeing over 6'6" players. And I think that really impacted him last night. Bryce Young.
No doubt about it. Because, again, we talked about it in the pregame. When you think about the supporting cast that he played with in college, you play against a bunch of five-star high school athletes that go on to play their career in Alabama. You're always playing on the lead. You're always being protected by an offensive line that doesn't allow a lot of penetration, so you have clear sight lines. Now, when you're the first pick in the NFL draft, you're expected to elevate the talent around you. And I think it's going to be difficult when, it's so kind when you say a sub 6 foot quarterback.
Oh, he's 5'10".
That's just that's like
it's better than me calling Cade
Doug
McNabb.
Flutie is a sub 6 foot quarterback,
Well,
and he got mad when he called him 5'9"3/4.
Well, I remember Drew Brees at the scouting combine. He insisted he was 6 feet tall, and the first measurement wasn't, and he was livid. He was just mad, and that probably carried all the way through his great Hall of Fame NFL career. But I'll never forget being up here at Hallis Hall, and I was working at another place. I had to do a TV interview with Cade McNown when he got drafted. And I said, here at Hallis Hall with the little lefty, Cade McNown. And he shot a look at me like I just said the worst thing in the world. He goes, "Who you calling little?" And he was looking down on top of me, and he was a little bit bigger than me. But yeah, you don't mess with a quarterback's height.
There's always a haunting measurement time in all of our lives. For me in my high school program, I tell you, in my college program, I was always listed at 6'5" because they just ask you how tall you are. Then you go to the combine and they make you stand up against the wall to pick your toes up off the ground, and then they stick a ruler on your skull. And they measure you from that. And the first time they barked out 6'3" 3/4, I remember looking at the guy and I'm not 6'3" 3. So whether and you know what too, Jeff? The thing about it is when you get measured in those circumstances, it costs you money.
True.
And that's why we all want to be taller than what we actually are.
Well, I'm 5'7.5", and that's on a good day. And I'm probably going to be shrinking here soon at 61. But it's funny because on my board I always write the exact height that they give at the combine for players, and Tom sees my board. He makes cracks about the 3/4 or the 6'3" 1/8. Like that matters. Hey, it might matter. It might be the difference between a tip pass and the defensive line or not. Who knows?
You're right. But I guess when it affected me, I took offense to it, just like Drew Brees, Doug Flutie, Cade McNown, whomever we're talking about. We just happen to be talking about Bryce Young, who we saw last night.
I'd give anything to be 6'3", trust me. Anything in the world. So Bryce Young, 55% completion against the Bears, his worst since week 1 in his debut against the Falcons. He did have one really good play, and Brisker coming over in coverage on Mike Strawn, the practice squad player, caught a 45-yard pass. That's an unbelievable athlete from a small school. That was a great play. That was the first time all year he made a play like that. So I don't know if this is going to be him, or does he have it in him with better talent around him? If he, and again, that's their issue, not ours on our podcast. But I'm just curious because he was the number 1 overall pick.
I think it was a great pass placement because when you look at where that pass was, it was in the direction of going to the sidelines towards the hands of the receiver. So if the receiver wouldn't have caught the ball and it would have tipped off his fingers, it would have harmlessly bounced out of bounds. It wasn't in the field of play, so I think it was a really smart pass by Bryce Young to give his receiver that opportunity where it's either going to succeed or failure, and the success is going to be a great catch.
Good news, Chicago United Airlines is getting brand new planes with all the bells and whistles like Bluetooth connectivity, screens at every seat, and room for everyone's roller bag. United, proud to fly the Chicago Bears, and you too. All right, let's talk more about the defense. And just in general, as Matt Eberflus pointed out, first time since 1998, 0 sacks allowed, no turnovers, and no touchdowns allowed by the defense. It also happened on your 1991 team. So congratulations. No sacks allowed and no turnovers for your offense. I don't know who it was against, but I know it happened in 1991. But that's the kind of complimentary football that he wants to play. And there was a situation where, the Bears did force 6 punts, but there was one. The starting field position was the Carolina 38 after a nice punt by Gill, and the Bears drove the 38 yards in 9 plays. That was the only touchdown of the game, Deontay Foreman's 4-yard run. They have to do more of that, the more complimentary football. And I know people get weary about the cliche of coaches, and they talk about complimentary football, but it is a fact of life. Any football, you got to play complimentary football, and I think for the most part, last night the Bears played complementary football as best as they could.
Yeah, you know what? I think on that touchdown drive, I think to me the best play of it was the touchdown run by D'Onta Foreman, even though it was only a couple yards. Because if you look at his last muscular effort to get the ball across the goal line before his legs touched the ground, it was a really great move, and it was a great display of power with defenders on top of him to get into the end zone. It just kind of gives you a little snippet of the desire D'Onta Foreman has with the ball in his hands.
I know you watched the tape. While the offensive line played well, blocking Derek Brown was going to be a challenge. They didn't have Brian Burns. They were down to backups at so many positions. They're already down 3 starting linebackers. The top 3 outside linebackers aren't playing. The top inside linebacker isn't playing. Their top 2 cornerbacks aren't playing, and one of them is not going to come back. But Derek Brown's good. He had 10 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. What'd you see and how to deal with him on the interior?
He's a guy that the Bears tried to single block every once in a while. And, a couple plays, he beat Tevin Jenkins, one of them being a tackle for loss. But when you're talking about a 6'3", 240-pound player that has great maneuverability, whether he wants to play to the outside edge of the guard or on the interior of the defensive line, he's rarely is the focus of the point of attack because you're not going to get great movement against him. He's more of the type of player that you would like to kind of steer clear of and go to the outside or the opposite edge of him. But he's like the other dominating defensive lineman that we've seen throughout, our lifetime in the NFL, that you're going to have to be aware of him. You're going to have to understand the formations you use offensively to put him in the worst possible position. And then you're going to have to run some plays to try to tire him out a little bit, like they have this year in the Raiders game or some of the other games out there that they've really tried to use that outside edge. And that's kind of similar what you're going to have to do this week against Detroit, is really take advantage of that outside running game with receivers, running backs, and anybody else who can get out there.
After watching so much of this season, knowing the personnel as you do and what they're best at, what, in your opinion, is the Bears' go-to running play?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's personnel, dictated. If you have a good dynamic defensive tackle, that quick pitch, when they're in shotgun formation, the running back is lined up to either the right hip or the left hip. The quarterback gets it and pitches it out immediately because they have good tight end blockers, 85, 84, 18. Stephen Carlson played, 88 last night. So they have good edge blockers, but they also have good offensive tackles that can pull and get to the outside to lead the immediate sweep. Plus they have offensive guards that can be able to get outside if they want to run a guard-led sweep. Plus they have screen plays that can work the edge. But to me, if there is dominant interior defensive lineman, that quick pitch to the outside, and then if there's a better outside contained running defensive ends, they have the ability to have really solid power double teams created maybe by a Darnell Wright and Tevin Jenkins, that they're really well organized about getting movement on the first level defensive tackle and still getting one of the 2 athletes up and getting a second level block. And we've seen a lot of those plays. The one in New Orleans that D'Onta Foreman was tripped by a shoelace tackle and got up punching the ground because he knew that was going to be a touchdown. That was an inside the tackle, really over the outside shoulder of Tevin Jenkins. So a lot of it is personnel dictated, but I think the Bears and Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach, are fortunate that they have the personnel that they could take advantage of their most vulnerable defensive spot.
What we really didn't talk about last night on 3rd and 7, last snap that could put away the game, and I kind of already had given my fade to black after the missed field goal, the long field goal attempt by Pinheiro, which is not good because there was going to still be time on the clock, and I just kind of assumed a little bit too much there.
I think went a fade to orange.
I did both. I did both. I think it was the exuberance of finally getting a victory again. Yeah. But doing the math and knowing how the defense played, I didn't feel a lot of comfort in the fact that, or scared. I wasn't scared that Carolina was going to be able to move the football, but you just never know. You could get a deep penalty and set up a field goal to tie the game, whatever. So Luke Getsy, I think, deserves a lot more credit. We didn't really touch on it. 3rd and 7 in that situation, and again, it's a group think. It's a decision. You could either run the ball and punt or go for it on a pass, and I think that 3rd and 7 was a really gutsy call. And it was executed perfectly by both the quarterback and the receiver taking the pop, in this case, Darnell Mooney. Were you okay with the decision? Did you think it was the right decision, and would you do it that way again?
Yeah, I was okay with the decision. They were getting good pass protection by the offensive line. It was evident all night because there was times that Tyson Bean may have been holding onto the ball a little bit too long. However, in the biggest moment of the biggest play, really to decide the game, Tyson Bean stood back there confidently with good protection up front and went to a really trustworthy receiver in Darnell Mooney. And he delivered the ball that it was going to be first touched by the offensive player. And then it was a gutsy catch by Darnell Mooney. So, yeah, I'm glad the fact that they stayed aggressive, because there was a play earlier in the game in the third quarter when it was 3rd and 18 and they ran a draw. I didn't like that play. I thought, there's an opportunity there with so many, with the DJ Moore and the Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and Tyler Scott, that they could have gone for some type of pass over the middle with, to see if they could get a big first down at that point. So, yeah, I can disagree with some plays, but I agree with that play.
So in the retrospect now of 4 starts and a quarter and a half, I guess, of playing time for Tyson Bean, he went from this unknown that few people outside of Chicago knew about from Shepherd University to being on the set of Amazon with all those guys and the ex-players and Andrew Whitworth and Tony Gonzalez,
Richard
Sherman. That's who the quote. That's the quote that I gave earlier. That was Richard Sherman. Now that I think about it, about quarterbacks, and he should know he tried to take away a lot of balls from quarterbacks back in the secondary. But he was on the set with Bears fans going crazy at the end of the game at Soldier Field. But that is a big hop from one extreme to the next. And now, we don't know. He may not play another snap this season. Have we learned enough to know enough about Tyson Bean's future in the NFL, regardless of where on the depth chart that is? Is there enough to him that makes you feel really good that he's a Bear right now as an undrafted rookie free agent?
I think Tyson Bean, most importantly, has given himself an indicator that he belongs in the NFL. And if you give him the opportunity to study the rest of this season, go into the off season, and he's never going to be a guy that needs to be encouraged to be in the weight room and be in shape. That's the standard that he lives by. So everything that Tyson Bean has learned about himself and what he's going to do in the off season to become more educated about NFL defenses, about a better understanding of the Chicago Bears offense, about the job requirements. I'm all in on Tyson Bean, and I hope he has an opportunity to be a Bear for a long time in whatever role he achieves.
Yeah, I certainly, if I'm looking at it from an analyst perspective, I feel very comfortable with him being on that depth chart. He just, there's just something about him for sure. Vizzy Hard Seltzer, the official hard seltzer of the Chicago Bears. Let's touch on special teams before we wrap up and give a quick sneak peek of Detroit. Cairo Santos deserves a ton of credit for that 54-yarder that became a 49-yarder because of the Cody Whitehair penalty. And he nailed it and went 3 for 3. He's had a really good season. He's had a really good time as a Chicago Bear, and he's really kicked well in Soldier Field. And then cleaning up the punt return that was, according to Next Gen Stats, the 3rd most improbable punt return touchdown since 2021, because Smith Marset ran 79 yards for the touchdown, but actually traveled 106.5 yards from snap to score at 19.5 miles per hour. So he avoided Josh Blackwell, who was coming in strong, and then got past Patrick Scales. But there was no lane integrity in that return, and he just ran away for the touchdown. That was the only one of the game for Carolina. Those two components of special teams, what were your thoughts?
It was a banger punt. And the thing about it is when you have a punt that carries significant distances and maybe doesn't have the hang time attached to it, there's a certain separation to the first line of defense and the aggressiveness of the returner. When he sees those open lanes, it's full steam ahead attacking the goal line. And I think that's what happened. It was the perfect combination of a long punt and a returner that was hungry. Listen, it's not a weekly occurrence. We're not sitting here talking about, oh my God, another punt return against the Bears. It's just it happened to be a punt return against the Bears on Thursday Night Football when scoring was the priority because there wasn't a lot of points scored at that point. So, you give credit where credit is due to the returner, but I don't think it's something that Richard Hightower's special teams, are, under the gun because this is a regular occurrence.
How about Santos?
I can't say enough about the kid. Kickers kind of have a thankless job, and I give him a hard time probably as much as anybody. But when he was backed up 5 yards after making a big kick, and again, we talk about how important points were in this game. I admire him, and he's got a lot of courage, and he went out there without hesitation and banged that next kick, and you see the results of it.
Bears fans, you can be there for live NFL action all season long as the official ticket marketplace of the Bears, and the NFL Ticketmaster has a wide selection of tickets available for every game. Find tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/Bears. It's a weekend off of rest and recovery for the Bears. They'll be back Monday, and they get ready for the Detroit Lions. Should be getting some news by midweek, as Tom mentioned at the outset of this podcast, on Justin Fields at a likely, I would say, return, but who knows? It's up to a lot of different factors, but let's take a look at the Detroit Lions. I begin with the line of scrimmage, and their offensive line is highly regarded. It's done a great job. Jared Goff has done a great job. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery doing a great job. And then you got to always be aware of Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive side of the ball. They're starting two rookies, one inside linebacker, strong side linebacker, I should say, and Brian Branch, this nickelback that they have. But they've got mojo, and they're going to be home in a really raucous environment.
Yeah. When was the first year that you were in Detroit Stadium?
Well, the new one?
No, since you've been going to
1997.
Detroit. Okay, yeah. Since 1997, Jeff, this is going to be your loudest experience you've ever had inside Detroit Stadium, and it's probably going to be the loudest I've ever had since 1985. And I think that is a real weapon nowadays because when you talk about Dan Campbell, the head coach, who will never be in a stance, and the change of a culture and the way the Detroit fans feel about them, we've seen them travel on the road better, and we'll see a reflection of it. So it's something that the Bears are going to have to be able to overcome, organize snap count on the line of scrimmage so you don't play into the hands of a guy like Hutchinson. And then you're going to have to be able to attack Jared Goff, get to him and make him look like a slow, older quarterback by getting some pressure in challenging his fundamental foundation throwing position. They have a good offensive line. They have a good running game. David Montgomery, ex-Chicago Bears over there, so I think it's going to be an emotional game for him. St. Brown's brother is over there. Emotional game for those two and their parents. So there's these little different elements and factors that will play into the game, but you kind of don't recognize them because, you're not aware of how much the crowd contributes to good defensive football play in Detroit until we're up in the booth, hearing it from above.
And the Bears trying to stop yet one more losing streak, and that's in the division. 8 straight consecutive games lost. The Lions going to L.A. to meet the Chargers tomorrow, so they'll have a long ride back before they take on the Bears. The Lions at 6-2 on top of the division. All right, that's going to wrap us up for our podcast. Appreciate you so much for joining us. For Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks for listening. Our next Bears Etc. podcast dropping next Tuesday after our interview with Matt Eberflus. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe now on the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.